Okay, it's Chris. You know the drill. It's Saturday. You're looking for what's upcoming on crowdfunding next week, and there are a ton. I haven't even counted them. There are way too many. I'm going to be talking way too much. I got my drink right here just in case as I pause the video and edit that part out, but you're going to see a little bit of everything. And as with this past week, it's just kind of cool what pops up, how you feel about things beforehand, how you feel about things after the launch, how you feel about things once you've read the rule book, learned a little bit more about it, seen what the price levels look like, and seen what the pledges look like and why they get it now and all that stuff. And I just love talking about them and seeing how that changes, because you always get a picture in your mind of what it's going to look like, and then it happens and it launches and you look at it, and always, somehow, almost every single time, it's different than what was up here originally. And that's why I like talking about these. That's why I like discussing them. That's why I like playing games in general, because there's always something that surprises me. And most of the time it's a good thing, but sometimes, it's not, but sometimes it's a little bit of a slap in the face. That hurt a little bit more than I probably should have done it. Anyway, that's all I got. So let's go straight into the games this week. I got nothing else for you preamble wise. And there we go. Let's do this. We're gonna do these a little out of order. Obviously the biggest one launching next week, and this one is Dune War for Arrakis. This is coming from CMON. This is launching actually on the 14th. They've changed dates. They're not going on a Tuesday afternoon for some reason. So we're gonna see what this War of the Ring-esque encapsulating game from the leader in miniatures across the internets is going to give us. I mean, how do you make a two-player game with a bunch of exclusives, right? That's going to be really the question, because that has been their MO. Is this going to be similar to the other games? Is this going to be more Dogs of War, like going way back? Are you going to see more Blood Rage-esque vibes? Not from the game. I'm not talking about the game here, but I'm talking about the tier levels. How can you give a bunch of expansions? No, just kidding. War of the Rings has plenty of expansions, right? So that's what you're going to be looking at here with this. But the question just really is, do you need a game like that? Do you want a Dune-inspired game? Do you have any affiliation with Dune? If you're like me, I have no affiliation with Dune. Where's Dune? Right here. I love Dune. I love that game. I have no interest in the IP whatsoever, though. I mean, the IP was not what got me into this. What got me into this was the fact that people were like, hey, this is a freaking amazing game. Oh, and by the way, it happens to be Dune at the same time, right? Like, oh, okay. I don't know. I don't even know the names of the factions. I think there's some free men, something like that. Anyway, I haven't seen the movie, I haven't read any of the books, and I have no affiliation from that standpoint. And I have Star Wars Rebellion with the expansion, I can't get that played. I haven't bought War of the Rings because I'm not going to be able to get that played. And so, I look at this and I go, yeah, this is a great game up here, but is this going to be a great game here? And I don't really know. Maybe I did that backwards. You know what I'm saying. But, is this going to be something that's actually worth picking up? Is this going to be more like... what was the other game? What was the mythic game that they did the remake of? Catastrophe? No, Catastrophe. The one I'm talking about. The one that they said that the limited sales and they had a bunch of pre-orders already filled and they just were selling like 10,000 of them or something. The remake, I'm completely blanking on it. Someone in the comment section will tell me, or I'll play it over my face right here and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. What I'm looking for here is just an incentive to, be able to get this to the table. And I'm looking for like sub $150, right? Because you can get the War of the Rings, which is an absolute classic of a game. Like, no one disputes that is an amazing thematic incorporation of everything that game and the series entails. And when you're making a game based off of that, right, this is inevitably going to be compared to that. And not only is it going to be compared to that in the mechanics, it's going to be compared to that price-wise. Because if I can go pick up the other game for half the price or a third of the price, why would I pick up this one, even if I like Dune? That's going to be the main question. And that's the question that they're going to have to answer, because, again, you're going to have plenty of miniature junkies going in on this. But the question that I'm always going to ask myself when it comes to this is, can I get it played? Is it going to get played? And that's the reason I don't have War of the Ring, like I already said. And that's the reason I will be watching this. I will be heavily studying this, looking at this, checking out the rulebook. They better have a rulebook on day one, please. Thank you. And I'm sure, the only people that have been covering the CMON games for the past 3 or 4 at least have been Board Game Co. and Quackalope, so I would assume that we're going to see something from them on day one. I haven't actually seen if they've got something out right now. I'm not up to date on things because I don't have this bookmarked. I don't have a lot of that stuff on my radar, so I'm probably going to be looking at it on the day one launch along with everyone else that's watching this video. So you're going to see my interpretations of what comes out from that standpoint, and that's by far the biggest game that's launching this week. The second one's going to surprise you because I'm going a slightly different direction here, and that's Sagrada Artisans. When this game came out, I really looked at this as a dice laying sort of collection game, if you will, and it was sort of all the comparisons at the time. If you're not familiar with this, all the comparisons were this versus Role Player, the dice laying and the patterns and the collection and the mitigation, and that's what was always compared to. Like, you were either on Team Sagrada or you were on Team Role Player. And I was on Team Role Player, although I got rid of Role Player because of reasons. But this is, okay, you're drawing me, just when I think I'm out, you're drawing me back in. Because adding a little bit of a different component that I could see my wife and I being able to play. But will a game like this with a legacy-esque version actually be able to draw me in and want to keep me playing? Because the big problem with legacy games like this is just that once you play them through, it's kind of done. You don't really like the end game product that they give you, even though they say like, okay, well, you've got an end game board or an end game situation that you can continue to play. Like, I know next to no people, I'm sure there are plenty of you people in the comment section, know people that, look at that and go, my city, oh, the end product of my city, I replay that over and over. Oh, my final board of Pandemic Legacy, I completely play that all the time as my preferred choice of Legacy or my preferred choice of Pandemic now that we finished it, right? No, nobody says that. So that's what I'm always concerned about with this, because I just kind of got a little bit burned with the last Aeon's End Legacy of Gravehold. Not burned, no, it wasn't a bad experience, but like I'm looking at it going, there's just a lot of stuff that doesn't incorporate. There's not a lot of stuff that always, integrates well. There's a lot of power creep, and power creep in Sagrada Artisans. That's a whole different conversation, right? Like, oh, this dice is super colored red, powerful. I don't know where I'm going with that. You know how I ramble in the middle of videos. This is going to turn people off. This is why I don't have 10 or 20,000 subscribers. Anyway. I can't stop myself though. But they say that it's going to be evolving with asymmetric powers or powers and abilities and tools that are going to be gained along the way. And instead of using a traditional board and dice, you're going to be actually using colored pencils. So how do you feel about that? How do you feel about using colored pencils in a game like this? Because it seems like more of a legacy with roll and write-ish. So take that for what you will. There's not a whole lot of other details that are known. I mean, I'm not sure how much detail you can have in this apart from people saying like, hey, spoilers, or hey, trying not to do a spoiler review impressions video, and this is really good, or, well, it's not going to be like, hey, this game isn't really good. So you'll get some information. I'd hope to see a rule book of some sorts on the day one launch as well. But that's the second biggest one of my personal interest this week. Now we're going to go slightly differently. We're going to go over to GameFound, and I'm going to cover this just because it's not going to be on yesterday's roundup, because it's launching 10 hours after I'm filming this on the day before that this is airing. And so games that launch on Friday, when I do my roundup on Friday, well, obviously they can't be in the roundup if they're launching on that day. And so Keyforge, we're getting a new Keyforge. We're getting a new Keyforge on crowdfunding. How do you feel about that? Keyforge, the game that is known for having complete decks that you can never mix, integrate, or change, that you can just pick up and play. I mean, that's both the pros and the cons right there in the description, right? You get a free Keyforge deck if you follow after backing. So I guess I should probably be following this at this point to see if I want a free deck. I don't really know, but I've always been open to trying it. It's just, I don't really know. I know a couple people have offered Keyforge, just for me to try it out at some point. And this is one of those games where I just think of like, okay, somebody brings over a couple of Keyforge decks, we play, once, and then, I'd never play it again because I just don't own it and because I'm not looking forward to it. But it's one of those that I always would be open to trying to give myself more experimentation, because as I did just last week, or in this past week, I did a little impressions video on Ivion, which was superbly impressive for a pickup deck creation, deck construction with a little bit of deck building as well. Not deck building, mostly deck construction, but also pre-made decks that you can play with a little bit of aspect of Summoner Wars at the same time. So when I've got something as solid as that, and this, again, I've seen a wide range of opinions across the board on this, is it really going to appeal? And it probably depends on the price point, but I can't see that the price point is going to be necessarily super great on the crowdfunding. I'm going to guess there's a little bit of upcharge. The other question is, when people buy this, I mean, they buy like 20 decks. And so I'm imagining price levels are going to be something along those lines. And I'm not really sure I have the time to learn 20 different decks or play through 20 different decks. Like I can barely play through the one deck of the Ivion character that I have in already. So price point be darned. I don't really know what to do with that one. Also launching on the 13th, we're going to go over to Kingdom Come Deliverance. This is based off of the video game, the RPG, and this is going to be 1 to 4 players. Captivating story, voice acting, and socially immersive experience. Sorry, not the 13th, the 12th, as the 12th goes by there. You're going to get a little bit of a miniature character if you're following right now, and there's 15,000 people following. So I don't know. This has a big following. This has a big IP that's associated with it. But I don't really know what to make of this as another open world narrative campaign-ish game where your choices matter. I mean, we've seen that probably 6 to 8 times over the last year with games. And so the question is just going to be, how different is this one? How different is this compared, IP aside, to something that we just saw like Forsaken that's running up against it right now? We see these things going in waves, and it's definitely going in waves on crowdfunding in the last 6 months to a year, and this is just no different from that sense. I haven't looked at any of these updates. I haven't looked at any of these mechanics. So you're going to be looking at it just as much as I am when it launches, because there's, again, just like with Keyforge, there's little to no information on the page itself right now. I have to think it's going to be a little bit like a combination of Destiny's meets open world campaign game. It says over on the Board Game Geek page here, there's going to be an app that's going to give you needs for scenarios, so you don't have to like manage it all. It's not a big thick textbook like I've got with Trudvang. And it's cooperative, which is kind of cool though. I kind of like that. And I kind of like the medieval theme, but the question is just going to be, what makes this that much stand out? What makes this much different than the other open world games? How are the mechanics going to actually work? Show me a rulebook day one, please. That's all I ask. Okay, what else we got going on? 13th, we have Necromolds. I believe this is an expansion for the original Necromolds, which came out in 2021. This is literally building your creatures out of clay or Play-Doh or whatever it is, and utilizing them in a way that you only have so much clay, so you can only build so many figures. So that's sort of like your point allocation system, and you have creatures that you're going to be upgrading, ability-driven characters that you're going to be battling in a skirmish-style situation. It reminds me very much of the one I reviewed recently of Token Terrors in the sort of the shape, the style, and the skirmish-ish. Now, there's plenty of differences with this versus Token Terrors. This is using more of a dice sort of situation, and you're literally smashing your opponent's characters on the map. So how do you feel about that? Similar to Token Terrors, though, multiple levels of complexity, multiple layers of details and abilities and differences that you can add into depending on your player wants, interests, as well as your experience. And so I don't really know. I don't really have a lot of interest in it, but it's definitely a cool gimmick, and it did really well, I think, the first time around, and the people that have played it have really liked it, similar to Token Terrors. So if you're looking for something like this with low overhead, easy to play, multiple layers of complexity, this is one that maybe you should have your eye on when it launches on the 13th. Next up, launching on the 13th, we're going to go a slightly different direction if I can find it in the tabs here. This is Factions of Soul. This is also coming on the 13th, and this is a 1 to 4 player game where you are traveling the galaxy and utilizing both a pick up and deliver, a collection, a resource-based system to maneuver around over 3 rounds, trying to explore as many planets, complete objectives, and score victory points in whichever way you can in sort of a multi-tiered, multiple variable ways to be the one standing at the end. Factions have abilities. Planets are actually going to physically move around this orbit to change where you're trying to go and how you're able to get there, as well as you're going to be voting each round for a game-changing / breaking event that's going to drastically change the way and literally even break some of the rules that the game maybe has set out for you to begin with in order to make it more of a strategic but also very tactical nature. Now, the trick here is that you have 1 movement and 1 action per turn, so you have to make very, very wise use of it along with your abilities as you go. We're going to see what happens when it launches on the 13th and kind of see what fancies it tickles when it goes live. So there you go. Next up, launching on the 13th, very little information on Board Game Geek of this, but this is Horizon First Contact, sci-fi-esque, horror-esque, 1 to 4 player cooperative sort of crawl game. Variable difficulty, unique mechanics, and surviving against the oncoming horde in this sci-fi-esque game. That's about all the information that's on Board Game Geek right now. You can see a little bit of what they're offering here in terms of the pictures, but we'll kind of have to wait and see when it actually launches to see what some more information is, because there just isn't a whole lot out there. Next up, launching on the 12th, we have Lunar Rush. Now, this is a 1 to 4 player simultaneous action Euro style game where you are one of the mega conglomerates, and that's a tough word to say really fast, traveling to the moon, bringing resources there to and fro. And you're going to be utilizing different paths that are going to be different lengths and different speeds. And so the longer the route, the more stuff you can bring with you. Obviously, you can see how that's going to change what you want to do on a turn-by-turn basis. But you're also going to be colonizing and building on the moon as well in order to establish a better base than your opponents. Simultaneous action, though, with a Euro game? Okay. Going for a unique mechanic here. We'll see if they can pull it off. This is what the prototype looks like so far in terms of the sails, in terms of the ships that you're going to be going, right? The slow, medium, and fast that are each going to have different cargo spaces that you're going to be utilizing. And you can see the different paths that you will be taking along this very unique board. This is one that's probably going to have a lot of attention on it. This is probably one of the bigger ones that's going to launch this week, just based on some of the stuff I've seen floating around about it. It's gotten a little bit more media coverage as far as I've sort of seen compared to these other ones. And so we'll kind of see what happens when it launches, because the Euro style is definitely evolving. And is this going to be a deluxe game? Is this going to be, you know, what's going to be its hook otherwise? Why are people going to be interested? Why are people going to be getting it? The mechanisms are definitely different. They're definitely unique. But is there going to be interest just for another space game? That's always the question, right? Theme is saturated, so we're gonna see. It looks cool, it sounds interesting, and hopefully we'll get to see what the gameplay actually looks like with a rulebook or two and some videos as well on launch day of the 12th. Also launching head-to-head with that on the 12th is the Mushroom Sorcerer, where you're going through 3 different phases and you're trying to be the best sorcerer in this elemental spell battling type game. Take a potion at the beginning of the night, gives you different abilities, and then using those abilities in the second phase, you're going to be summoning different creatures or having different ways of attacking and battling your opponents. And then at the end of the night, refresh, regrow, and see where things lie. And you want to be the last one standing in this sort of dueling, wizarding, spell blasting at each other game. Gathering Moons, having the most victory points at the end. I'm intrigued to see what this one looks like. This one gives off a very cutesy, artistic appearance, but I think this could be a little bit of a heavier take that game. Just depending on how much interaction there is, because it seems like, just based on the description, that there's going to be a fair amount. So I'm intrigued to see what this is actually going to look like. It looks very interesting, but I need to see some more blood and guts of it on the Kickstarter or GameFound or wherever it's launching page when it goes live. So this is what I'm going to have my radar on. This is going to be a little bit of a sleeper pick if you're looking for something, and I can see it going either way. So there you go, Mushroom Sorcerer. Now, what do we got going on? Next up on the 13th, we have a remake of Pueblo. I believe this is coming from Portal Games. This is a 2002 Kramer and Kiesling game that is going to be remade. This is a building block style spatial game of the Pueblo Native Americans from the Southwest, where you are slowly moving this chieftain around the outside. And if they can see your colored cube, you get points. Whereas in this game, different than other games, points are bad. And so the more cubes of yours that are seen, the worse you do. But if it lands on the corner, then it starts looking from top down. And it's just playing all of your cubes until the end. So we're going to see what's different. I'm imagining this is going to be a little bit of a improved aesthetic, and probably some deluxeifications. Reminds me a little bit of Block and Key, the one from Inside Up Games that just has gotten delivered and I haven't gotten my review of yet. So it's going to be a little bit of that. And what else they've got in store for us? I think maybe they said a little bit of new content, even maybe like a little expansion or something. I don't quite remember, but that is going to be launching on the 13th as well. Next up on the 13th, we have Age of Inventors, which is more of a build your own lab with asymmetric abilities and powers, creating your own invention, but having to complete your own invention while being able to hire scientists of a very high reputation from the first half of the 19th century, like, say, Tesla or Curie, for example. Sorry, second half of the 19th century there. But you're not only going to be limited by the inventions you're creating, you're going to be actually creating these inventions and placing them on the board as well, and that's going to score you more points in the clever way that you can position them. There are going to be cards that are going to alter the rules slightly as well by a round basis, and you're going to combine all these mechanisms in order to score the most victory points that you can at the end in sort of a Rube Goldberg type machine combination of mechanics, so that you can beat your opponents. So that is launching on the 13th as well. Relaunching on the 13th, we have Valroc in addition to that, where you are mages summoning various creatures in the first phase of the game, and then utilizing your skills and abilities in the second phase in order to beat them to score victory points. So we'll kind of see. This is a magician-based elemental game, and like I said, this is a relaunch, so we're going to see what's different this time around and whether or not it can succeed when it did not, as we've seen relatively good success so far in the last year or so of games that have gone this way. So we'll see what happens when it launches on the 13th. Next up, we have Spark Riders 3000. 60 to 90 minute game, co-op tower defense-esque game. Survival-based, scenario-driven game where you are, like I said, trying to survive until the end, a la most tower defense situations. Not a whole lot of other information out there on what the details and mechanics are going to be as you're trying to avoid your spaceship from being blown up, trying to upgrade it, and trying to fend off the alien pirates in the first place until the end. But, survival co-op tower defense, you're speaking a little bit of my language here, Spark Riders. So I'll be interested to see what happens and if this piques my interest enough to give it more than just a casual look-see on the 13th when it launches. Next up, we have EOS Rise, Project EOS Rise, if you will, launching on the 13th. 1 to 4 player cooperative adventure, smashing together the first intergalactic spaceship in terms of mechanisms of worker placement as well as push your luck. They have a little bit of a different vibe going on overall, because not only are you going to be having those two mechanisms, you're also going to have a unique dice worker placement, as well as roll for location is what they're calling it. And essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating the locations you're going to based on the rolls that you have, which is going to give you a unique dynamic experience each time that's going to be different as you're playing it. You're going to be choosing one of said 4 characters in this game, trying to maximize the skills that are going to be given to you, whether it's an engineer or a pilot or a medic or something along those lines, in order to upgrade, keep the ship safe, but also explore and make your way to the Paradise Planet before you run out of time, because time is going to be the thing that you were battling in this game as well. Mining, scanning, crafting, avoiding aliens, fighting aliens, however you choose to go about making your way there in the end, because if you lose your command portion of the ship, or you just run out of time, well, you lose. And this is a cooperative game, so we'll see kind of what it entails. We have some sort of event system, as you can see in this card play as well in the picture behind me. So let's see what they got going on here. Let's see. More space stuff. Show me what you got. Launching on the 13th. Next up, Rising Waters. 1927, based on the Mississippi flood that happened in that area at that time. You're going to be utilizing several mechanics, including area control, set collection, as well as variable player power mechanisms in order to avoid disaster. Haha, little pun there, little pun. Keep your family together, but this is also 1927 in America in the South, so you're also playing as African Americans based on the Board Game Geek description that are also going to be dealing with white racist landowners that you're having to navigate the, pandemic-esque style of things that go against you as you're also dealing with the floodwater rising. So we'll see what happens with this one, where it lands when it launches on the 13th as well. Next up, we also have Myth Wars Battle for Midia. This is a 2 to 4 player war game with drafting as well as army creation, army building, with dice rolling, as well as this unique coin mechanism in terms of, how you're getting and choosing your creatures or people in your faction in the first place. Build your army, roll your dice, move your characters, assign values, attack, rinse and repeat. Last one standing wins. It's a war game, token-based system here that you can see. I have no clue what to expect of this. I have no clue war game versus different war game. More of a fantasy, steampunk-esque vibe here going on. So there you go. I mean, you know me in war games. I cover them because I know you guys like them, but at the same time, well out of my depth. But it's launching on the 13th. Let's see what it's got for us. Quick update here, just general overview of what's going on in Kickstarter right now. I just want to point this out because I pointed out at the beginning of the video yesterday for the roundup, and I know more people watch this video routinely than the roundup yesterday, but I just want to highlight this for a second here because there is really an even distribution. There's nothing like huge, massive right now in this week that I just, reviewed yesterday, or this upcoming week that I just talked about in this video. Really, the outlier is actually Merchant's Cove with over $300,000. Otherwise, Fox Experiment, $200,000. New Zealand dollars, $260,000, which is what? $157,000 there. Then you go down to Forsaken. Forsaken is at $200,000, $219,000. Rivet Wars is at 197 pounds, 1,000 pounds, that is. And that's 226, so that's relatively similar. Then you go back over to Quad Heroes. Quad Heroes is 179 Canadian, which is 136,000. Then you have Dawn of Ulos, which is around 74,000. Atlas Lost, 90,000 right here. Again, blowing the expectations out on that one as well. If you would have said Atlas Lost had more than Dawn of Ulos last week when I was doing that video, I would have looked at you sideways. Rise and Fall, which hasn't really gotten a whole lot of acclaim either there, already at 53,000 pounds. Scrolling down here, Trailblazers, 200,000 pounds. I mean, and all those ones that I just talked about previously to Trailblazers were all new ones this week. Weimer, again, 65,000. So you've got this range. You've got like the 100 to 200,000 range, which is really close packed together. And then you've got this like 50 to 100,000 as well. And just all of these things, Kinfire Chronicles 213, sitting very, very similar, almost exactly the same as Trailblazers right now. Going down further, Almost Innocent, sitting at 52,000, falling in that $50 to $100,000 range again. So just tons of campaigns that are just falling within the solid, but not like blowing you out of the water spectacular, which some people are going to look at as a negative. Some people are going to say, oh, there's no good games on crowdfunding. I'm going to make the opposite argument here in that sense, is that there is something for everybody, and there's such division that there is just equal opportunity and equal wealth being spread around. Nothing is monopolizing it, and people are able to, really get something that they're not necessarily going, well, this one is so popular that I can't afford to miss out on, because, we see that too on some of the really big campaigns. And so I think it's nice to see this wide variety, because there is literally almost everything across the board of those games that I just mentioned in terms of mechanisms and genres and play styles and appeal. And that's really kind of cool. Because I can't say that a lot of weeks on crowdfunding, right? I just can't. So there you go. Brief updates, brief overviews, but just something I wanted to point out here at the end. Oh, I didn't even mention Ivy on here, which is ending really soon. 12 hours to go, so well before you guys are going to watch this video. That's ending as well. It's sitting at 75,000, which, speaking of 75,000 flying under the radar, I mean, that's really impressive for what they're putting out as well, for the two-player skirmish-esque dueling game with deck construction. So... and you can just see all this other stuff. There's just so much other stuff out there. The board games now, we're seeing just so many of these miniature STLs, and we're seeing so much RPG, so much tabletop RPG stuff that it makes it almost like hard. You can just see I'm scrolling through here, and it's less and less board games now. And I wish they even allowed us to, you know, sort of divide it even further on Kickstarter, but that would involve Kickstarter actually showing more support and more nuance to their platform, and we know they don't do that, so take that for what you will. There you go. That's what's upcoming next week. Again, nothing that's like really grabbing me and going, okay, I really need to get this one, but I think you're going to see a couple of those surprisingly achieve, and I think you're going to see a couple of those probably, you know, just with all the other stuff I just mentioned, and as much as stuff can be evenly distributed, there reaches a saturation point as well. And so the question is just going to be, really, for me, what does Dune look like? And then a couple of other smaller ones like Mushroom Sorcerer, you know, how appealing are those? So, as you know, I read about a dozen rulebooks a week, and my mind starts to get fried after about, you know, like 10 of them. So it's always a good time. Always a good time. I'm trying to get Trudvang Legends rulebook read right now. That's not as easy of read as I was hoping. It's not. So we'll see where that goes. And I need to get some War of the Ring played this weekend. The card game, not the miniature game. So I can get some review out by that timing of the end of the month. So let's see what else we got going on this week. One or two top 10 lists. I have a top 10 list that I'm going to do that I've already filmed, and then I've got two others from this past week that I mentioned in the other one. I've got the Etherfields review, which I'm hopefully going to have out this week. And then, I don't know, there's something else I was going to try and review and get filmed. I don't know. There's all sorts of stuff. I've got a couple that I'm behind on, so I need to figure out which ones those are. Oh, that's one. Okay, I need to do that one. Okay. That's all I got. Not as long as ramble as yesterday. If you really want to see me ramble at the end of the video, go check out the roundup from yesterday. I really rambled at the end of that one. That was a good ramble, though. So I got nothing else going on. I'm working all weekend, too, so probably less video and game time. But I'm off most of next week because I'm working so many days in a row. So take it for what it is. Win some, lose some. Ha ha! That's all I got. Stay classy. Didn't forget it this time almost, so see you around. It's YouTube. Do the YouTube thing if you like.